Fu
The Ding
podcast.
Fu Podcast.
It is the Ding Fu
We're
Podcast.
rocking. We're rocking. We're sticking with it. The Ding Fu Podcast. Welcome back to another episode. We have a special guest with us today. Really good friend of ours. This is our friend Jeff. If you want to introduce yourself, tell us everything ASL, what you do. TC.
What does ASL mean?
Yeah, wait, I don't know any of these acronyms.
ASL, age, sex, location.
Is this a tech? Is this a tech thing or something?
No,
Isn't that
ASL
like-
is a really old school thing. It's like when you
Like-
used to IM like random like strangers online on like AOL, and you just be like ASL.
Is this what you used to do?
No, this is like a thing that you haven't seen this. It's like a meme. It's like something that you never mind. It's
Yeah, it became a meme later.
it's like a it's like a meme
I
now
definitely remember
to reference
seeing
the old times.
What's
Yeah.
TC?
TC stands for total compensation. That's more slightly like a tech term. It's like an industry term to refer to how much you make.
Yeah.
It's not an industry
So-
term. It's just a term within the Anyways.
My name's Jeff Fogg. I'm 28 years old, male in Calgary.
Calgary, Alberta,
TC?
Canada.
TC? Oh man, I don't even know my TC to be honest.
Oh,
Just
damn.
kidding, just kidding.
That means he's baller. No, even you don't know how much you're making.
I have a ballpark, but I think my bonus changes from year to year,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't have a full number. I have a range though.
Mm-hmm. Just tell me how many digits to stop at. Whoa! I'm out of digits. Let me bring on my toes. But, yeah, so I guess today we want to kind of talk about the different industries, different lines of work that we're involved in. Yeah, we're all lucky enough to be working in, I think, some pretty big industries. So I think we all have some pretty unique experiences to share that maybe people outside of the industry wouldn't really know. So yeah, let's just go ahead and kind of give a quick introduction to, I guess, what it is we do, or we're studying in some cases, and what we're trying to do.
This is in one case.
Some not mention any names. But yeah, I guess I can go ahead and start. So if you've watched our previous episodes, you know I'm working in the tech industry, and I'm working currently in Seattle at Amazon, and it's been about a year and a half, close to 2 years now, I guess. So I still consider myself pretty new to the field. I guess pretty junior, all things considered. Still a lot of things to learn. But yeah, you start picking up on some processes, some habits that you see over time. And yeah, I guess, here to talk about them. Yeah, go ahead.
I could go
That's
next.
awkward.
I don't really know.
So I'm working for Suncor Energy. That's oil and gas. It's because I think outside of Canada, the energy companies aren't as well known. So by title, I'm a scrum master, but as everything is within like organizations, you just do whatever you need. So more of like a project manager / people leader type of deal. And I've probably been working for just over 3.5 years. But just like Jack, I still feel really junior, especially because everyone that I work with has 50 plus years of experience. Always the youngest person on the team by like a long shot.
Sorry, did you say 50?
1-5.
Okay, I was like 50 plus years. Okay.
Cool.
All right, okay, I'll just round this off. So I'm the most junior because I haven't even started my career yet. I'm a second-year medical student.
Negative 2 years of experience.
-4 at the very least.
Oh, because of residency.
Yeah,
But
and
you've been getting
negative
other experience, right?
9 at the
At the most.
Holy shit! Another decade.
Damn, dude.
Okay, so Who do we start off with questioning? Start off Jack?
You know, I think we could do kind of a round table. Like anyone could just fire off questions to anyone else and just, you know.
Tony,
Yeah.
what's your PC?
And then whoever answers a question can just take the next question and keep the chain going. You know.
Okay, sure. I'll start off. Jeff, what is a Scrum Master?
So Scrum Master, it
Sorry,
What-
Scrum or Scrub?
happens a lot. Scrum, like
Scrum.
SCRUM.
Sorry.
You don't know.
He could be a Scrum
Every time
Master,
I say it,
too.
everyone's like, "You're a Scrum Master."
Well, scrub in medicine is, like surgery. It's
Yeah,
not necessarily bad.
it makes sense. So a Scrum Master is within certain methodologies of project delivery. There's waterfall, which is like you have sectioned periods of time where you deliver certain milestones, and then there's more of an agile methodology, and that's where you deliver features in a shorter iteration. So instead of waterfall is typically over like years, but agile is usually you deliver something every 1 to 4 weeks, depending on how your team runs. And so a Scrum Master is for the people that are new to the agile type of delivery. They're coaching them on how to think, how to iterate, how to formalize as a team. They call it a servant leader, but within Suncor, and I think within every organization, it changes a lot. So for me, I focus a lot on the people, the process, and kind of unblocking those challenges that my teams encounter. And so each Scrum Master can be the servant leader for however many pods, and then just on the needs of your pod, your kind of role varies.
So it sounds kind of like not necessarily a manager, right? But more like a consultant, even like on HR type of stuff, or
Yeah, I would say it's close. It's definitely more on the managerial side. So it's every day I facilitate some of the ceremonies. And by ceremonies, I mean there are a certain number of meetings and things that you need to do on a weekly basis that are a part of being in an agile delivery methodology. And so I facilitate those. And then when the team is encountering problems, I help solve them so that the team can focus on just whether it's developing work or like change management, anything of those sorts of things. And then I go deal with, okay, does this other group within Suncor not align to what we're doing? And if not, how do we make it so that we're all going in the same direction and stream, same vision and strategy, sorts of things.
okay. Yeah, I'm not sure I still understand it, but yeah, why don't you ask Jack a question?
Maybe I can elaborate on some of the things because the I guess project methodologies that Jeff talked about, waterfall, agile, they're used in software engineering as well, and agile is used by most tech companies. You can think of agile development kind of like a regular app release cycle. Like a lot of apps will push out regular updates every 2 weeks or every month, right? Or big games or just a lot of software these days. So agile development kind of aligns with that release cycle where you have a set of goals that you want to finish within that release period, and it's commonly referred to as a sprint. And so in each sprint, you decide on the tasks at the beginning of the sprint, what you're committing to finishing, right? And each engineer is going to have their own tasks assigned. And so I think Jeff's role is to first make sure everyone knows what they're doing for the sprint, and to make sure that they have what they need to be able to finish their work for the sprint. And if they are blocked by some external dependency or otherwise, that he can make sure that they're unblocked. Does that sound like what you do?
Yeah, man, that was a beautiful description.
Does explain it better for you?
So it kind of sounds like so is your management more based upon the agile methodology and not necessarily based upon like a specific project or a specific division or anything like that? Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah.
So you're managing people in the context of this methodology, like this agile methodology, rather than being the manager of a specific project or a specific division that focuses on a certain thing.
Yes.
So
I think
who
that's-
created agile?
Pardon?
James Agile. I'm just kidding.
Who created Agile? Man, it's been a long time since I've read up on the history of it.
I actually had to study this in school as well. I can't remember. It might have been a software engineering philosophy, actually. Agile development methodology.
So
Yeah, it
I wanna
is from
say
software
something, sorry,
development.
Sorry, go ahead, Tony.
I was just gonna ask you. So, I guess how do you train in this? Do you have to, like, is there a like someone they created a school of thought or something,
Mhm.
and they said like, okay, now we'll give out certificates. Is that how it works, or is this sort of just a philosophy that's written into a book or something, and then like every company can just sort of design their own way of doing things?
So for me, it was a little bit different for me, and the reason why I say that is because, so when Jack was talking about like sprints and those sorts of things, so when Suncor was first moving into delivering in that kind of way, is that it started out in one of our innovation groups, and then as the new guy on the block, I had a bit more free time, and so someone that was senior to me was like, "Oh hey, why don't you just come help out on this project?" And then they started delivering agile, and then eventually I was leading the project and I did well, and then afterwards I told them like what goals I had career wise, and then they said, "You know what, just how about you be a scrum master?" So before that I've had no formal training at all. They just kind of threw me into a role. So I don't think that there is any type of education path, but there are certificates that you can take to become a scrum master. But for me, they just threw me into a role and they said, "Hey, why don't you give this a try?" So, all right. And that's how I became a scrum master. But I think other people, like you can convert from, say, project management or managers into this type of role, but I don't think there are any formal prerequisites.
So, are you a scrum master for a specific project within Suncor, or are you like, do you just go around to different projects to ensure that they do it in this way?
I'm a scrum master for a specific area, and then so I have 4 teams that I manage right now, and so for those 4 teams, I do everything related to Scrum for them. But in the future, I could be. It's either by designation by team or by area. So under every area, all the teams in that area report to you, or if your team is particularly large, then they can assign specific teams to you that need help. But there isn't any right or wrong way.
So do they I guess, do they report to you for stuff that's in this context of like this way of management, and then they have another manager who they report to for things that are like content related, related to whatever they're working on? Is that how it works? And you're sort of like they kind of have like 2 managers in a way, or do you report to that same manager too?
No, you're exactly right. So they have 2 managers, quote unquote. There's me, and then their actual report to manager, where it's like the guy that assigns them the work. So there's something called the product owner, and the product owner is he owns what they're creating. As in Jack's context, they would be the features and everything related to that specific feature. So like think about like font type, or how the buttons are developed, or how they're engaging users and things like that. And then me, it's just like taking care of all of the everything else that's not like HR related or feature creation related, things like that.
Interesting.
It's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit ambiguous.
Do you find it inefficient that they have 2 managers to report to? Sorry, I cut you off.
I think it's okay, as just because I'm only helping them try to become more like efficient and effective in the way that they do things. So more process focused, um, and how can they deliver faster together as a team. And then that other manager is focused on like, what do we create to give value to who we're building for, type of deal. So they're very distinctly different, and I wouldn't say any of our responsibilities or accountabilities overlap. Um,
How often do people in your teams report to you specifically?
I'd say on a daily basis.
Daily basis. Okay, that's pretty interesting. That's I guess is that the like the equivalent of stand up then?
There's stand up, but there are other things like I'm sure you've done retros and like sprint planning.
Yeah,
type
but those are like kind of bi-weekly deals, right? Like those are once a sprint kind of things.
Yeah. The other methodology that's also part of it is Kanban.
Mm-hmm.
And so Kanban is um, kind of the opposite of, it's just a continuous flow of work that you manage through something that you can visualize through stickies and like several different columns. And when you say report to, kind of like, what do you mean when you say report to actually?
I was kind of asking that based on the conversation you guys had prior, where Tony was saying is it weird that they reported two managers, because I think in Amazon, for example, the Scrum Master is not necessarily a second manager. It's just a separate person there to kind of make sure everyone's on track for their work, basically. So they might message you from time to time saying like, hey, how's this task looking, like where are we at for this?
Oh, I see.
But it's not someone that everybody would actively report to unless there is some kind of time critical or high visibility thing that needs to be coordinated across between teams. Then in that case they would probably set up like regular meetings, probably daily meetings, to sync up on that kind of topic. But I wouldn't say it's a regular process to report to that person every day.
Oh, so for me, I guess in conjunction with being a Scrum Master, I am driving a specific part of the project.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like a Scrum Master and something else. So what you're describing at Amazon of the high touch project that needs a lot of visibility and coordination, I'm doing that at the same time as well.
Oh, okay.
But Suncor is like in a transitionary period where they're still developing and thinking about what does a Scrum Master do within the organization, because it's a lot of waterfall still, and then some agile in there as well. So it's like puberty for them.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask about that because I did look it up to confirm, and Agile and Waterfall are software development methodologies. So I'm curious, like, how come Suncor is adapting these kind of methodologies for their project development?
I think it's just the shift in thinking of, historically Suncor has always, or from what I've heard, Suncor has been for a very long time waterfall based. And because of all these big changes that are happening, like tech companies are exploding in value, and you're reading about like Amazon and Google and how they're working differently. And I guess Suncor thinks it's a bit old school of being strictly in a waterfall type of project delivery. And so when we proved out, there's some innovation groups of, we could do these things really fast, but we could never do it if we stuck to waterfall. And so they're starting to change some of its internal delivery to agile of, okay, so we need to, and this is something that I'm doing in the project, for example, is we need to move all our data from point A to B, but if we did it in a waterfall way, it's going to take us years. Whereas if we try and do it incrementally and we try and keep adjusting every delivery period of 2 weeks, then we might be able to do it faster. And so coming from the top down, you're saying, okay, if we deliver in an agile fashion, we're going to be minimizing our losses that we're taking from, say, the upfront planning. We're able to be more flexible in our delivery because we're working in sprints instead of like segments of time. So I think they saw the value in the trials and the pilots of delivering in an agile fashion. So they're trying to do the huge transition over to it.
That's pretty interesting, actually, because I think in the tech space, a lot of people probably are pretty sick of agile, I would say. And so when you said like agile is like the new thing, I think in tech it would be viewed as more outdated because it's been around for so long. Every company does it. Like Facebook, for example, does not do agile. They don't
really?
have sprints or stand up. Yeah, and I think a lot of startups are also leaning in that direction. So I feel like it's one of those grass is greener situations where a company feels like it's stagnating, and so it wants to change something within to, try something different. It's pretty cool.
That's pretty interesting. When my company thinks about agile, especially on some of the older projects that I've been working on, it's like we need to deliver like Amazon, and we need to deliver like Microsoft. And I think exactly like you were saying, grass is greener on the other side, or perhaps maybe they don't even know what type of delivery is truly within tech, and I guess the preference there. So it'd be funny to see if tech is moving towards waterfall, whereas all these other people that are in waterfall are like, oh man, we need to deliver like tech, which is agile.
Well, the majority of tech is definitely still going to be agile. I think some companies just like to be quirky to stand out, So Facebook is definitely one of those. Yeah, I personally don't have an opinion on which one's more efficient. I feel like it actually more comes down to the overall work culture within the company and the team specifically.
So if I could ask you then, when you're, at least for me, when I'm thinking about tech, people think like really glamorous offices, a very laid back work culture. People like to hang out after work and get a log in the office and those sorts of things. Are there any really big misconceptions about tech that you've heard from people outside of the industry?
All right, let's start with those ones.
Here we go. Here's the original content we were planning.
All right, glamorous
let
office.
me hear the grass is greener on the other side. Maybe I don't want to move to tech after all.
Glamorous office. You're looking at my office for the past year and a half.
Hey, that's a lie. That's a lie. He was in Hawaii for like 2 weeks.
Oh, that's true. That's
True.
true.
Very
Yeah.
glamorous.
No, you're right.
Isn't it a month?
It was a month.
Was it a month? Okay, yeah, my bad.
Okay, so glamorous offices. Yeah, some companies definitely have really nice offices. And a lot of tech companies, like pre-COVID at least, have a lot of perks. There's no denying that. A lot of free snacks, right? A lot of like free food. Some have Michelin star chefs. And I'm not sure where that culture started. I think it did start with Google because they were kind of innovating in terms of doing all those things at a really early point. And then Silicon Valley kind of started copying that. And then I think it just kind of trickled down from there. So that is true to an extent. It's not true for every company. For example, Amazon is notoriously famous for being pretty cheap and frugal. So the offices are nice, but you're not going to get any like free food or drinks or anything from it. So it's just a regular office. Microsoft
Bananas,
also
right?
free bananas for the community. Like anyone can grab it. You don't have to work at Amazon.
I remember you mentioning that before.
Yeah, it is a thing. It's not anymore for COVID. It was a thing. Which Facebook has, by the way. They have free bananas on top of everything else. So. And I hear Google. Actually, I heard Google is becoming more cheap recently.
Oh yeah.
I heard they started taking away some of their snacks in their offices. So, That's gonna be interesting to see when the offices reopen, how they'll react. And then Microsoft also doesn't do free food. They have some subsidized stuff, so it varies from company to company. But yeah, like you probably have a higher chance of getting, I guess, cool stuff, right? But I think those things, they're kind of they're kind of the cherry on top, right? Those wouldn't be the reasons that you would come work in tech. Those would just be like bonus factors, right? So I guess with that we can talk about the second point you made, which was chill work-life balance, I think. And to that I would say, hey, that entirely depends on the company you work at and even the team within the company. I'll give you an example, like not even Amazon, right? Because Amazon is so big, there's bound to be a lot of discrepancies. Let's say you have a small, like you're making an app. Let's say you work on an app that you have some pretty decent users, right? And you have a component like the help page. Like your team works on the help page for the app. You're probably not going to be very busy because not a lot of people are going to use that portion of the app, right? It's useful, but it's not something critical. If it breaks, it's not going to break the user experience for the most part. You can still use all the functions in the app.
Yeah.
Now let's say you worked on ads and suddenly something breaks and your ads aren't showing. You're literally losing millions of dollars by the minute, right? So things are going to be more intense. So it definitely entirely varies on how much impact your component of the company has, right? How much money it can bring in. So for example, within Amazon, people that work in AWS generally will have a pretty bad work-life balance. They I've definitely heard some horror stories of people clocking in 10 plus hours a day, including weekends. And yeah, the burnout is a factor, is potentially real, very, very high in some of these companies. But yeah, at the same time, there's plenty of other companies or teams where you can probably put in 4 to 5 hours a day reasonably and get by. So I think in the end, it comes down to how much you want to do. Some people are just passionate about software engineering. They like to write code. They like to put out code. So they're probably going to want to work in. They don't mind working in faster paced, busier team. And then some people just want to chill and get by, right? We also have to talk about on-call, which I think is something that's not entirely unique to tech, but not every industry has to deal with, right? On-call is basically the byproduct of services nowadays being available 24/7, right? If something goes down at midnight on a Saturday night, someone has to be able to fix it if it's a critical thing for your service. So because of that, pretty much every engineering team will have an on-call rotation where typically it's the engineers within the team. You get a week of time where you're responsible for your service's health. So if anything breaks, you'll get paged no matter what time of the day or night it is for that week. So basically, you have to plan out that week beforehand, right? You shouldn't be making any plans to travel or be without your phone or laptop for any period of time, basically. And if you're on a really high traffic service, chances are you're gonna get a lot of pings. So I know friends who have been pinged 10 plus times in a week, and it's not a fun time. So yeah, I would say chill work-life balance is definitely not necessarily the case. It's very dependent on what you do and how much traffic your service gets and how much impact it has. And
so Jack, how do I become a help page code developer?
It's not that hard, actually. I mean, once you become a software developer, let me put it this way. Let me put it this way: the less impact your feature has, the more chill your work-life balance will be. But the less the impact you make, the less visibility within your org, the less chance of promotion, so to speak, right? So it's like some people want to climb the corporate ladder. Some people want to become senior engineers. They want to become principal tech leads, right? They need to work on more higher visible impact projects. So it kind of balances itself out, right? For example, Amazon has an internal messaging app called Slack. No, sorry, Chime. I got it mixed up. Yeah, I got it confused. Chime, and we migrated to Slack this past year. So basically, whoever's working on Chime Team still, like this thing is basically obsolete. We only use it for meetings at this point. So if you're still working on this team, you pretty much know like you're just chilling at your time, right? Like you know that this thing's not going anywhere. So you're just kind of there's really nothing to be gained by working there. But yeah, what was the next point you said? People hang out after work.
Like the culture is pretty nice of people that are actually friends, like outside of the workplace. I would say at least for Suncor and the teams that I've worked on, a lot of people, it's once the day ends at 5, it's everyone goes to their families.
Right. So I think there's that's also something I think would depend across teams, and I would imagine that's also something that depends on the average age of your team. Like if everyone has a family, then they're more likely to just go home afterwards and I guess spend time with their kids or their whatever. But if everyone's kind of younger and maybe in their 20s, then they're more likely to hang out after work. I would say in Seattle, there's a phenomenon known as the Seattle Freeze. I don't know if you've heard of that.
What's that?
It's this thing where people are pretty nice to you on the surface, but it's hard to actually become friends with them. And I don't know why it's a thing, but it actually has its own Wikipedia page. But basically, it's like this thing where like people will be really nice, like you can say hi to them, but then if you try to like get into their friend circle, like it becomes very difficult. And I think my personal experience is, I think the problem with this city is there's so many transplants. Like a lot of people, most people here aren't from Seattle. They came here from somewhere else to work for a tech company, right? And what ends up happening is they either came with other friends, so they kind of hang out with them, or they're in the same situation where they're trying to make friends with people here, but I guess they already have their own friend group. I don't know. It's weird, but basically what I'm trying to say is it's definitely not the case where everyone's all buddy after work. I think people definitely will also do the thing that you said where like afterward there's happy hours and stuff like every now and then, but since COVID started, that's definitely been a lot less. Like we had some virtual happy hours and like game stuff, but those didn't really stick for long. I would say at the end of the day, I think it's pretty much the same as most other companies. People tend to want to keep their work and private lives separate. The only industry that I've heard of where it is really buddy, it seems to be like consulting, because you're traveling all the time with the same set of people, and there's a lot of drinking I hear after work. So
yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. It's weird. You think that a lot of transplants would want to be friends with, like all the transplants would gather together and be friends because no one has anyone else.
Yeah, I think what ends up happening is like people will find communities. Like people will find other, like if for example me, like we ended up finding other Canadians who came to the US for work, right, or stuff like that. And yeah, I think people just end up finding their natural own community. And then if you're looking to crack into one, but that group's like, oh, you're not from Canada. No, but yeah, I don't know. It's weird that it's a thing, but yeah, for some reason it is. And then I can't remember the last thing. Yeah.
Oh, is there more? Sorry.
I can't remember the last thing that Jeff said.
I think it was just that.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like that was it. So I've been hearing that there's some talk about unionization of Amazon workers, including the software developers. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so that's not going to happen anytime soon. Yeah, I think there's been attempts to start them in the past, and they always start with the fulfillment centers, right? Because those workers definitely have the harshest working conditions. But Amazon is they're pretty swift with shutting these things down, and they've been pretty like open about just dismissing employees to try to organize unionizing and stuff like
That's
that.
happening at Google too, right? I think they tried to unionize there too, and they got shut down.
Yeah, so like
I think it's still going on. Has it been shut down yet? I thought the Alphabet thing is still going on.
at Google or at Amazon. At Google, I don't know if it's shut down, but at Amazon, I don't think there's any ongoing efforts at the moment. Um, yeah, I don't really have any thoughts on it.
So what do you think the future is like at Amazon? Like given things like, the antitrust lawsuits,
hmm
I guess that's a big thing, right? Antitrust lawsuit.
Yeah,
Where do you think that would lead the company, and how would that affect the workers?
right. I'll be honest. I feel like a lot of these antitrust lawsuits against the big tech companies, I feel like a lot of them are for show. I think a lot of times, well, tech is a big corporations in general is an easy target to go after politically. It scores points from both the left and the right, right? Because nobody wants to see like big corporations dominate, right? So when politicians, when Congress goes after these big tech companies and has these hearings, I think it plays well with people. But we almost never see any actual action come out of it, right? The latest example was, what was the fine that Facebook got for their previous antitrust? It was something really, really small. That basically kind of showed these companies that they're allowed to get away with these things because the fines are going to be slaps on the wrist compared to the potential profit to be gained, right? So, unfortunately, I don't feel like there's going to be much resulting from this. I feel like a lot of these tech companies have become almost too big, and it's going to take some radical shift in the government, I feel like, to even start going out, because I think historically U.S. governments have been very soft on corporations in general. They've always given companies and corporations like more preferential treatment if they could historically, and so yeah, like I think it's not really fair what Amazon does in terms of its marketplace practices. But yeah, I don't see the government taking action for at least for this term. I don't see it happening for this Biden's first term.
So AWS is not going to get spun off of the I guess marketplace, or vice versa, I guess.
Interesting. I would think that retail side has more of a antitrust, has more of an argument for antitrust than AWS, because AWS does have some competitors. Azure, for example, has been making significant market gains in market share for the past few years. I wouldn't say AWS by any means has a monopoly on the cloud market, whereas Amazon retail, I would say, dominates like e-commerce by a long shot, and most people who want to sell something have to start there.
I think a while ago the argument I heard was that AWS was the moneymaker,
It is.
and the retail was like losing money, and so Amazon was effectively using AWS to subsidize like their push for more market share with retail.
Right.
And that was the problem, was that like they could not actually compete on the retail side.
Yeah.
They were
that's right.
artificially kind of like bumped up by AWS, and so there was the argument, I think, for spinning off one of the companies.
Okay.
That
So
they don't have that connection.
right. And this is not just something they do for retail. This is their exact strategy for every new space they enter, which is to use AWS to subsidize their new ventures at a loss, to undercut competitors, to price them out, to dominate the market. And yeah, it's so I guess the easy solution, the logical solution, would be to break up AWS into its own company. Is that what you're saying, right? Yeah. Yeah, I don't see that happening.
So suppose suppose the antitrust lawsuits did land, do you think that would affect compensation at these big tech companies, or do you think these workers would just, I guess as the companies become less profitable, would they start shedding workers because they can't compensate them as well, and the workers would just be able to find jobs elsewhere that pay the same amount?
Get to one of the juicy topics.
Yeah, I would
Topics.
say it's much more likely that they would just start shedding workers because these antitrust lawsuits are not going to affect the industry as a whole. They affect a few specific companies, right? These other companies are not going to start suddenly taking losses in profit and having to scale down. So their wages and their hiring demand is still going to remain competitive. So if if a if one of these big companies start offering less salary on top of the antitrust, that's when they'll start losing talent.
Do you, do you think that the supply will eventually catch up? The supply of talent will eventually catch up. Like it feels like because it's so attractive right now. I imagine that if you're someone new coming out of high school, it'd be very attractive to study computer science
Yeah.
or data science or one of those things, right? And then go and get into the tech world. And so I guess I wonder how long before these things start to saturate. And like I've heard that like a lot of the efficiency from their labor force, right, in these companies come from their young people like you, right? Like so you guys are relatively underpaid, I think, for the amount of work they can get done, right? Because let's say you get work 80% of the work done as someone who's more senior, but the senior guy gets paid like 3 times as much, right? Then obviously on like a per dollar basis you're much more efficient. So as you get older, right, as your generation of coders get older, I guess, and as these new generations move in, would that have a negative effect on, you think, like the future of tech employees that are in your situation right now?
Yeah, so ageism could be a thing at some companies. That's true, especially if you stay as a developer. If you transition to managerial roles or project management, then that won't really be an issue. I think there is starting to be a catch up in the supply, but it's not where I am. It's not at this point actually. It's where the entry point is there's too many new people, too many new college grads coming out, and these companies just don't have enough headcount for new hires, for inexperienced hires. There's actually a huge demand at most companies for more senior developers, but the ratio of like recently graduated developers versus experienced ones is quite skewed right now because of the recent popularity boom in software engineering as a field, right, in computer science. So right now,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask: is there a statistic around the typical lifespan of a developer?
I don't have an actual statistic for you, but I would say most, like speaking from personal experience, a lot of people I know don't want to be developers like for their whole careers. I think it is definitely easy to get burned out from coding for prolonged periods. There's like some processes that come up repeatedly that'll kind of wear you down over time. So yeah, I don't have an exact number, but it's I don't think it's something that's commonly going to be done for like 30 years,
So do you think there'll be a rush into trying to get to management then, or like?
No, I mean right now I think more and more like computer science as a field is getting so popular that we're gonna see more and more supply of new grads coming out that are trying to get into these companies. And what we're already seeing now and we'll continue to see happen is a lot of these people are gonna end up having trouble getting jobs. This is very apparent if you go to like the subreddits for computer science related topics, especially for like people in college trying to get jobs. All the posts are basically like interview tips and like how to apply, where to apply, like how to get a job. And yeah, that's definitely the biggest problem, the biggest question that people have these days is like I'm trying to get into any company, basically. I think once you're in and you have some years of experience, it starts shifting where you become the one in demand, and companies will start going after you and being like, hey, we're looking for like a senior developer.
I have a question for Tony then. Um, so we talk a lot about like supply of developers and like how the new generations, like all these really hot new career paths. Has there been any impact at all for, I guess, applicants for your traditional quote unquote successful fields like medicine? I'm interested about medicine or like engineering, law. I know that we don't really have that representation here, but I'd be interested to see if like how this new shift in career aspirations is affecting like med school apps or like how medicine is taught, or maybe the fields that you have to consider, say like remote diagnosis or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I've been thinking about. So I would say like my hobby is economics. So like, you know, after I do med school stuff, like economics is something that I really like reading about and learning about, and something I've been trying to apply to, I guess, my own career field. To answer your question, I guess firstly, like just the most immediate thing that's happened is that this year there was, I think, a 30% increase in medical school applicants.
Increase?
Yeah, relative to last year, which I thought was bonkers. Like that doesn't make any sense to me because it's not like the job's getting any easier. In fact, through a pandemic, the job gets worse. And actively, the government's trying to cut healthcare in Alberta. So that makes me think that medicine is one of those fields, I think, where the entrance, where the young people who are trying to get in, they don't care as much about the economics. Right. I think that's true. I think a lot of these kids are very idealistic. And so I think it's going to be hard to have a shortage of medical school applicants. So, but then there is that bottleneck, I think, right, at the medical school acceptance, right, admissions, right? Like I think the number of spots this year is in fact lower than my year, if I remember correctly.
How many was in your year?
My year was 169 at my school, right? I think this year is down to 162. At least that's what I heard. Sorry?
Well, I was gonna ask how many total applicants are there like per year?
I think this year was near, I can't remember too well, but I think it's like 1,800 maybe.
Wow, that's a very low success rate.
Maybe 2K, maybe
Oh.
around 2K actually. I haven't caught up with that stuff in a while, but 30% increase, and I think the year I applied was like 1,500 maybe.
Wow,
So I'd imagine it's pretty up there.
it's crazy.
And so what I think about is that my field, I think it's almost like a glass castle or like castle in the sky kind of, like it's like a house of cards in a way. Like I think it's sort of propped up by this artificial restriction in supply, right? So we talked about in tech how, if you're someone interested in tech, someone will open up a program or school or whatever to get you in, right?
Yeah.
I think medicine in Canada especially has been fairly constricted. Like I don't think the number of spots move all that much. And it's centrally planned. I think that's the thing. I think our education is mostly funded through government, which has a budget, right? And so they don't want to spend more money.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not, and there are no private medical schools in Canada, I don't think, right? So that acts as like a gateway, right? And then the second gateway is residency spots, which again is government funded. So even if there is increased demand for it, there might not be increased supply because the government has a fixed budget, right? And so that acts as like the moat you can think of, right, for our profession, which in a way I think is really stupid and kind of fucked up.
Why is that?
Sorry?
Why is that?
Well, if we think about like when people always mention like, oh, we have a physician shortage or whatever, right? And think about like wait times and stuff, right? You think, okay, the demand is there. So if we had a free market for this thing, right? We know there are a bunch of people who want to go to medical school, right?
Mm-hmm.
if we open up more medical schools and more medical school spots and more residency training spots, we get that demand filled, and physician pay will come down, I think, right, because of supply and demand. Or it might not even, because we have a single payer. But I guess when I think about it, it's just like I feel like we're on shaky ground in some ways.
Yeah.
We're on shaky ground in that should supply increase, right? Which I think it can increase by a lot, because there's all these students who are interested in doing medicine, right? Then with a flood of, supply of physicians, then, pay would decrease. I don't know if I answered any of the questions.
Why? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, I was just going to ask, I guess some people think of the limited, restricted amount of people, or I guess the bottleneck of admissions, to be like, you want the best and the brightest to be a part of medicine. But when I also think, like, if you open it up to and increase the amount of spots so that there's more supply, but then pay goes down by a lot, do you think that would affect the applicants? Or I guess for the first part, do you think that's actually a good moat for talent that gets into medicine for the type of care that we receive in Canada? And then the second part is, do you think we would still see that many applicants if being a doctor, quote unquote, wasn't so prestigious or high paying as it is right now? Like, if being a doctor paid you $100K a year, do you think everyone would still want to be a doctor?
Yeah, those are really great questions. So first of all, I think your first question was sort of like, would our quality of care suffer, right, as the quality of applicants theoretically go down because you allow more people in? I think theoretically, yes, definitely possible, right? Because I think it's just a given. If you don't take the best and brightest, right, that the quality is going to suffer. Mm-hmm. Now, the question really is, I think, how much would the quality suffer? And who should get to decide what quality is held at, right? Because here's the thing. I think if we had a bit more of a free market, what you could see is that the quality of the education and the quality of admissions would still have to be held to a certain level, just simply due to the public saying, like, hey, the doctors from this school suck ass, right, or something like that. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, think about it, right? Like, if we allow more people in to train as physicians, right, and more willy-nilly, I guess, right, if the admission criteria really just kind of disappears or whatever, then if people start doing poorly, I think there'll be a reaction. That's how markets work, right? There'll be a reaction. I think the problem is we don't know what level we can go down to because of this artificial constriction. We just simply don't know, because if we've kept it at this level for so long, and in fact we make it more competitive each year, is how I feel like it's been going, then like we really don't know. Like, we really don't, like, let's say if we let in another 50 students each year, how much would care suffer? We just simply don't know.
Yeah.
Instead, I think if we have more of an open market, but we have, I guess, we have the quality set. Like, we still have, like, the CPSA, right? The College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta, right? Which does disciplinary stuff, right? You can still get college complaints and stuff like that, right? Yeah. That's one way to keep quality assured.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how much quality suffer? I think it definitely will suffer as you get more not unqualified, but less qualified applicants in.
Yeah.
But we just don't know how much that will go down. Because in fact, I think it's just about easier to get into medical school in every single other country in the world than Canada. Like, even compared to the US, we're harder. This is something I learned when I was applying. When you go on, like, the med school subreddit and stuff, like, if you just look at the grades and, like, the standards of people getting in, you're just like, oh wait, like, Canada is just a lot harder. But so let's say that if we opened up more to, like, the American standard, right? Do we feel like the Americans are getting substandard care because their physicians are not as qualified? I'm not sure. It's really hard to say, I think. right? Like, should this be something that the government decides, basically, right? I think is the question. What was the other question? Which was like, I guess, like how good of a moat this is?
Oh,
Something?
the
was-
second part.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead, Jeff.
I was gonna say I think Jeff was asking like how much is the money like a factor in wanting to become a doctor?
The money and the prestige.
Prestige.
That's a great question. I think it's gone down. I mean, just looking at my classmates and looking at the type of things they're selecting for now, which is less, I guess, less academics, right? And more so your extracurricular activity, your leadership skills, your interpersonal skills, and a lot your advocacy skills. Like, how much do you do for underserved people, right? Like, whether for indigenous people, like the LGBTQ community, or things like that. That's a way bigger emphasis now. So, for example, I was surprised to find out when I got in that out of my year, I actually had the highest MCAS score in my entire class. And I did not have the highest score possible. So that made me think immediately, like, I checked, like, it looks like the mark has been going down over time. Right?
Yeah.
So it seems to me like there's way less of an emphasis on that and more emphasis on these soft skills. And what I'm trying to get at with that is that I don't think these type of people care as much about the financials. In fact, I think most of us, we're aware that physicians do well, but I think a huge proportion of us don't even know how much doctors get paid. I didn't know until after the summer of first year when I really tried to look into it. That's when I found out. Right? So I don't think it's a huge factor for the current applicants.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think that's reflected in the fact that we had such an increase in applicants this year. Right? Even as, if you think about it, there's a contract dispute between the Alberta's doctors versus the government. There are cuts going on, right, from this government. Family doctors' offices have taken, I think, something like a 30% hit last year because their offices couldn't be open. And for a very long time, the government was not reimbursing for virtual care, for telehealth. So all of those things would lead you to believe that if you cared about money as your first and foremost thing, I think that this is not the best career possible. Right? The prestige side, I frankly, I don't really know. I don't know. I think that's really hard to quantify how much people care about that part.
Definitely. What just came to mind is, you know how typically within Chinese households, or like, I have a couple of friends and their parents are from India, and the three paths that they know because of like a very stable future and very prestigious job title is like lawyer, doctor, engineer. And so I mean, we're getting into depth. There's no way you would probably know like the diversity statistics of your applicants, but say if being a doctor in the future, if we had open market for it, was the equivalent of say being an accountant, like how that would change in terms of like pay, prestige, or like hours you work, because those households really push their kids to go into medicine for these reasons. And whether for good or for worse, that push towards medicine could spark that interest in it because of money and prestige. But if that isn't there, I wonder how that would affect the applicants and the care. But that's just a side thought for me.
My impression is that those type of applicants make up a huge portion of that application pool.
Mm-hmm.
But they make a very small percentage of actually the class.
No.
Meaning, I think most of them don't get in. Yeah. So I think the driving factor is there for the application, but I think they get weeded out.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, not that that's good, but you would want someone that's passionate about helping people to be your physician, and not someone
Sometimes I think it's a bad thing for me.
Yeah. What is that?
Sometimes I think it's a bad thing for me because if my entire fucking class doesn't care about how much they get paid, and we're negotiating contracts together, Do you see
You
what I
got
mean?
standard of living to uphold, bro.
You got mouths to feed, fam.
But I will say that I think as people progress in their training, they become more hard-headed about it. I think I see that.
Yeah.
I think first year is very idealistic, and I think as they progress in their training, they do end up caring about this stuff. But I think over the years, they're gonna care less and less about it. I just think I see that each new successive class care more about like social justice, right,
Yeah.
rather than their economics, which sometimes scares me.
Stop Asian hate.
For the future of medicine, of course, everyone, the future is bright with a lot of integrations into technology. And this is a question, I guess, for both you and Jack. Is do you ever think there will be a point in time where a person in medicine and a developer will need to coincide in terms of skill sets?
No. Why?
I'll offer a slightly different answer than Jack. I think Jack's side they don't need to learn medicine. I think our side we need to learn technology.
Yeah, I think that's a better way to. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
learn medicine. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah,
Jack's
no, I
like
think
another decade of school. Fuck that.
I think you put it in a good way, and it's that like, as doctors, I mean, like the traditional ways of diagnosis, and I don't know. I guess everything in this world is trending towards like being able to do it in an automated way, and so I was just thinking if that would ever make its way into medicine, and if everyone would need to have that kind of variant of education within their training of, okay, well, these are the new like machine learning algorithms for say, or like this is how you would need to integrate this type of imaging. Or I don't really know either field very well, so these are just things off the top of my head.
Well, I feel like those solutions will be provided to you by a tech company with an interface that you wouldn't need any training to use. Like
So it
how
kind
it
of
is,
be
I mean, like how everything is done now, right? Like if you were doing a CT scan, you don't need to know how to make that machine to interpret the results.
yeah. No, that's a really good point. I guess where it's coming from is that Suncor wants to do. So Suncor is traditional oil and gas. Its focus is like getting oil out of the ground and turning it into a product and then selling it to whoever buys it. But now us as a company, we want to begin insourcing a lot of our own services. And so things like some of the software development is now no longer strictly, we're not contracting other people outside of Suncor to do it. We're hiring people to do it within the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so at least within my area, there's been a mandate that everyone needs to be quote unquote digitally fluent. So you need to know like AWS, you need to know Azure, you need to do things like Power BI and be able to understand data sets and things like that. So there's more and more overlap.
in the company, or
Just
surely
people
not
within
everyone.
my area. So not like people within human resources, but at least people within our IT area will need to be digitally fluent and have certain mandatory certifications for AWS and Azure, things like that.
I think it's certainly useful.
We are talking about the future of medicine. I have a few thoughts, I guess, while Jack thinks about what he's going to say.
Mhm.
I think he said the future of medicine. I think for doctors, not bright at all. I think in the U.S. there's this problem with something called I mean, this is a prerogative term. I won't say it, but there's a problem with, like, for example, people with less education coming in to do the same job as you. So, for example, nurse practitioners and physician assistants, so NPs and PAs. That's a big talk in the U.S. right now, is using them to substitute for doctors because they cost a lot less, right? And so in a way, that's, you can think about it as them taking over your job, right? And they're the cheaper alternative. I think there's a fight over that right now in the U.S. In Canada, it's not so bad yet. In the U.S., a lot of that is also driven by what we talked about, school spots and supply, which is that they started opening up all these like online NP schools and stuff. So people are getting their like NP, like nurse practitioner degrees a lot easier, and so the quality went down, right? Which is what we were talking about before. But that because they have that degree and their professional associations pushing for the ability to do more things, right? Then they become a cheaper alternative physicians. In Canada, we haven't seen that yet. Maybe because Canada moves so slow because we don't have a free market. But I think that is part of the future, and that is something I think about, which is that like I want to do family medicine, but I think the first thing that the nurse practitioner have been trying to push into was family practice, is opening their own family practices. And if that's the case, right, that the eroding of that moat we talked about. I think in that's one side where it's not right. The other side is, I guess, technology, right? Which, as you get increased technology, you face more competition. Not only, you face more competition not only from the technology itself, but from foreigners too, right? Let's say if you're a radiologist, you read CT scans all day, and you have, CT scans exist on a computer. Why don't you just send that off to someone in India to do it?
Yeah.
Right. And if you have telehealth, right, I think US and Canada are probably the two best paid English speaking nations for physicians. So why don't you at least contract out to Australia or the UK? The UK especially, because their system is really fucked up. So that's another problem. And then the other side would be, I have a friend whose dad is I have a classmate whose dad's a radiologist, and his dad was like, "Don't do radiology. Like the computers are coming for you."
Isn't Ben a radiologist?
Ben's in radiology residency. Yeah, Ben's. Yeah. But is that coming? Is that true? Questionable. It's always been questionable. Like, I was interested in AI, right? Like, so back in like 2013, when I was in my psych degree, I took a course in cognitive science and got started on AI stuff. And then, in fact, after graduating from my first degree, which I did pretty badly because I took so many classes and stuff, I wasn't thinking of doing med. I actually applied for a computer science after degree. That was rejected.
Remember that?
Because I wanted to do AI at that point. That was 2014.
Right.
But I learned about it as a hobby on my own. So I learned how to program in like Python. At that point we were using Piano. I think now it's TensorFlow. And I did my stats degree thinking that, like one side of that is stats is the math for AI, right? And I was going to do AI potentially if I didn't do medicine. Where that is all going to is that I guess I've been thinking about these things for at least 7 years now, right? And I think there's always been that hype of like, oh, AI is going to take over medicine. And it just hasn't really materialized. One of the things that's happened before was, I think, computer-assisted readings for mammography, so mammograms, and that worked out terribly. So it's probably not coming anytime soon, but I think it will come. So I think, in short, the future of medicine for physicians, I don't think it's all that bright.
Yeah.
And then I guess talking about integration of medicine and technology, yes, I don't think AI is gonna be the first thing to come out of that. The first things are just like these really simple fucking shit, like electronic medical records. Right? Like we're still in the middle of converting that in Alberta. Like the U of A hospital has it now, I think, but then the Royal Alex Hospital in Edmonton doesn't have it yet.
Yeah.
So they're on paper charts still.
That's so mind blowing. Like.
Yeah, so that'll probably be where the opportunity is right away. And then things like communication, like telehealth, right, between doctor and patient. But that has its own problems. Like, Jeff, have you heard about Babylon? Like TELUS Babylon?
No. Oh, wait.
Like,
I think my sister was telling me about it, but I forget the specifics.
Yeah, so like it's a telehealth thing. And at one point, I think Jason Kenney pushed it on his Twitter or something. He was like, yo, guys, go to Babylon. It's so great and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And now the problem with Babylon is that you don't see a regular family doctor. it's basically a walk-in service with no follow-up. And those things, in fact, are not really good for your health. Right? So if you keep on seeing a different doctor every single time for a problem, and they don't keep track of what's been going on with you, they don't know your history, they don't know what's normal for you and stuff like that, that's not the best way to do it. This is like drive-through medicine, right? Where their incentive isn't your long-term health necessarily, because they don't see the aftermath, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're way more inclined, I think, to do short-term solutions like push pills or whatever.
If they're consistent in tracking like your day-to-day or your history or how you are on a weekly basis, and that was kept well from physician to physician, say paper or digitally, however it might be, would that be okay? Is the primary issue that there isn't, I guess, a database of your health that they can refer to, rather it's just a quote unquote drive-through?
I don't think that's the biggest issue. I think the biggest issue is not having a good relationship with your doctor. So this is another part that's like, I think really fucked up, is that I think our experiences with going to doctors is terrible, right? Like I remember talking to Jack, joking with Jack about this, right? Like your doctor, remember?
Anthony the legend.
Still has a grudge. It's like experience is not good, right? Like you feel rushed, you don't feel listened to. You wait a terribly long time in the waiting room and all.
Yeah.
But in fact, if primary care was done right, it is very good and it's very efficient as a cost savings, rather than having to escalate to specialist care. If you have things managed well in primary care, and they don't escalate, that ends up saving you money. I think the problem is that doctors don't spend as much time with their patients, and I think part of that comes because their pay has been getting cut.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I see it is, I think physician pay has been getting cut like year on year for like probably like 30 years now, like when you compare it to like inflation and stuff. And what that's done is that the doctors still make a lot of money, but how they're doing it is by seeing more patients. They haven't done that, they haven't been making the same amount of money because they've been doing the same amount of work. They've been doing it because they've been more quote unquote efficient. And I think that's a terrible incentive. And I think that happens when you don't pay your docs as well, right? When you keep on cutting things,
Mm-hmm.
that's what happens. So
That makes sense. It's like if you're already accustomed to a certain standard of living, you can only achieve the same way. It's either you get more pay or higher throughput because you're not getting higher pay.
Yeah, and you don't get paid for quality.
Yeah.
As sad as it is, right? Like you're not incentivized on that metric.
Maybe you should. Maybe the overhaul to the system is every patient of yours that dies afterwards, you get your pay deducted.
So actually the US has this kind of innovative new thing, right? Where they have a pool of physicians that get
5-star rating system. Okay, never mind.
and they pool their risk. They act as the insurance company.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
you collect like a insurance premium of your patients, essentially, like a membership fee, a subscription fee.
Yeah.
And then they do your best to make sure you don't need anything extra because they have to pay.
This is a Planet Money episode right here. I can already feel it.
I don't think Planet Money has done anything on this, but
no, I mean, I could see this being a Planet Money episode right here.
Yeah, Planet Money, hire me. But
sponsor this podcast, please.
this was something in this book called The Price We Pay by this doc in the U.S. Who's this surgeon, and he's just really interested in all these like economic stuff as well. And so he looked into the economic system and stuff, and this is one innovation he found. I think there's a company called like ChenMed that does something like this. So yeah, so they act as the insurance company for you, like. So then the doctors take on the risk. So then now they have incentive to do the right thing, right? Whereas before, if you have a separation of the insurance company and the doctors, the insurance company is incentivized, I guess, to keep. No, in fact, the insurance companies aren't even incentivized to keep you healthy because what's happening in the U.S. is that the insurance companies own you for maybe like 3 or 4 years, and then you
Yeah.
change insurance plans when you move jobs and whatever, right? Or if you're insured, if your employer decides to move plans.
Mhm.
So they're not even incentivized for your long-term health. They're just incentivized that you don't spend money in the next 4 years when they take you on, right?
Yeah.
So the innovation really has to come from the economics, like the incentive side, right? And I think this way works really well. If you have a group of doctors that get together and they cover your costs, you pay a subscription fee, and they are able to, determine that subscription fee through risk management.
Right.
Yeah, through a calculation of your risk.
It's really interesting.
That actually sounds like a win-win. Like the doctors will get more pay on average if the subscription fee is valued properly, and the patient should benefit because the doctors are more incentivized to not fuck up because their money's
is
on the
a
line
win-win.
directly. Huh?
Yeah, it is a win-win. That's why it's a good.
So why isn't it already a thing?
It is a thing in some areas, right?
But
But
why isn't it already a thing everywhere?
because change happens slowly, right? Like you have all these big entrenched players. You have to
Because
you
I
have to
think,
convert
but
patients, right?
because insurance companies are gonna fight it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's gonna be a lot of resistance.
The insurance company is going to fight it, and they're going to lobby and stuff, right? So regulatory capture, all whole 9 yards, right? And in Canada, like the thing is fucked up too, because like the government also doesn't own your risk. If you're a premier, and your term, I don't know how long the terms are, like what, 4 years?
Wow, when
It
you break
is-
it down like that, nobody owns your risk. Everyone's gonna die at some point.
That's a problem with single payer, right? They don't own your risk, right? Your government elected officials don't own your risk. That's why they make these short-term plans, because they don't give a shit about what's going to happen 10, 20 years down the road, right?
Everyone's got a
Who's
line.
collecting the fruits of your labor? It's the next government.
That's
Right,
a
so
good
they're not
topic for
fit.
another day. Actually, that's
Yeah, I think another topic we can talk about another time, it would be like AI. That's something I thought would be.
Oh yeah, that's an easy one to get into.
Well,
Could do a lot of episodes.
I don't have anything to say because I don't really know about AI, but I'd like to learn. So invite me to the call.
Yeah, don't worry. It'll be open source. The call be in the Discord group. Anyone can just hop in at any point.
Hop in. We're like Twitch chat.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's really cool. Actually, I don't know if you've talked about this on other episodes already, and if you have, don't feel free to not answer. I don't really know the story behind why you guys got into what you got into, or maybe you did. Maybe I forgot, but I'd like to know.
Well, we might have talked about it, but I don't really remember. No, we can go over it again. For me, I got into computer science. There was honestly no particular reason. I was just into computers growing up, and I knew I wanted to do some STEM degree, but I didn't want to do engineering because I just wasn't a fan of their class schedules. Like, I didn't want to have 8 a.m. classes, man. That was like a big reason. And I just throughout school, I just felt like that the sciences were not as interesting to me as the math. And even though software engineering actually doesn't end up using the math that much in application, it's much more in theory unless you're doing data science. It's still, you still have to think a certain way. Like you have to think in a very logical way, and that's also the case for mathematics. So I think for me, I enjoyed the process of software development where you have a problem you're trying to solve, and you have the right tools, and it's up to you to figure out, and you know that there's a way to solve it logically, like, and it oftentimes comes down to at least when you're learning the concepts, it comes down to knowing how to apply the tools, right? Eventually in the industry, it comes down to knowledge gaps. Like you just have to know what libraries to use and like what functions to call. But on a more surface level, like when you're designing the algorithms, I think that's where the fun really came in for me, and that's what stuck me through it to school. And then once you get in the industry, it's like, holy shit, this job pays a lot, and so that's what sees you in afterwards.
Just icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Come for the math, stay for the money.
But yeah, it's all about the numbers in the end, right? Yeah. So I guess that's my story.
What about you, Jeff?
To be honest, I don't even know I'd end up here. I mean, I went through the whole typical family gamut of, all right, I want to be an investment banker. And then I found out I could be an investment banker because I'm not good enough. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I just want to be an optometrist. I'm not smart enough to be an optometrist. And then at the end of the day, I was like, man, I just want a job in an office. And then thankfully, by who knows what, I got hired for like the random job that I got into Suncorp for, which was kind of like, I don't know, relationship management a bit, I guess. And so how I got to where I am right now is just purely coincidental. I wouldn't say it was planned or anything at all.
There's a lot of upside in like I think the soft skills though, right? Like in people management, I think there are a lot of upside to that.
There can
I
be.
think it scales better.
Sorry, what did you say, Jack?
I think those skills really scale better for like your later half of your career.
For the later half? That's if I can get into the later.
I would argue you're already in that part. Like what you're doing right now, like that's the easy transition into upper management.
I guess so.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so keep.
Don't forget us. Don't forget about us.
Yeah.
If anything, you guys are probably gonna be more successful than I will be.
Didn't you hear Tony, bro? He's not even gonna have a show. He's gonna be replaced by fucking computers soon, bro.
Jack is gonna be the one that makes the AI that fucking breaks my career.
Dude, but
Dude, I'm gonna be replaced by computers soon, dude. They're
They're gonna give Jack a new assignment. Jack's gonna work on the project. He's gonna finish. Be like, oh shit, I just replaced myself.
Yeah, by the end, you finish building. Like, wait a minute. What is this project called? Jackbot? Oh no.
Huh. And it's like
delete.
The moment you finish, its first directive is to kill its creator and take over.
What about you, Tony?
Sorry, before we get on to me, there was one thing I was gonna comment. Yeah, which is yeah, like why learn how to do something? You can learn how to get someone else to do the same thing, right?
Ooh.
Like
That's
why they scale so well,
that,
right?
that's a good way to put it. Yes, that is
True.
true. That is true.
True. If you're good at getting all the right people with all the skill sets to do what you want them to do, pretty good skill.
You're a CEO.
I mean, that's a skill you gotta learn, Jeff, right?
Dude, I'm a long ways off.
Okay, so for me, man, what a torturous path, right? For me, like I went everywhere.
Dude, it's
So
been
Jeff
hard.
actually pointed out that in our IB yearbook, I actually said like physician for my like what was it like future
Yeah.
career or
Oh
something.
damn! What a
And I think literally I put that down because I didn't know what else to put. And I think I saw like Jethro and like all the other smart kids put that. I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do one too.
what did everyone else put? Oh my god, that's a
Oh
throwback.
man, I forget. There was a lot of doctors, a lot of lawyers, and then I think there was some like
Yeah, we were so naive back then.
I know, what is it? Harvey put software developer.
Oh, nice.
I don't know. That's what he became.
Yeah.
Some of them put like accountant or business manager. I think that was the majority of our class.
That's pretty cool.
But yeah, like at that point, I really didn't know. I went into psych for my first degree, and I thought I was going to become a psychologist. But honestly, that was because Jack knows this. I don't know if Jeff knows, but like I had really bad OCD when I was a kid, and I got diagnosed in high school, and it was something I focused a lot on. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to learn about that, try to figure it out. So that's why I went to psych, and then I did figure it out. So I managed to basically cure it just about.
And then you quit psych.
during uni. And literally that was all I focused on. So I skipped all my classes. It was like, I think I skipped like 80+% of my class. There was literally one class where I went for the first class, didn't like it, but didn't drop it. And then the only 2 other times I went to the class was for the midterm and the final.
Did you pass?
No, I failed. And I was like, look, okay, so I failed in this really stupid way, which was I started studying for the final. So I haven't studied at all. I started studying for the final like 3 days, 2 days or 1 day, maybe even the night before the final. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. And I started studying, I started cramming. And I started cramming from the beginning of the course. Okay. And then so I ran out of time basically, and I didn't do like the last third of the course or whatever. And I go to the final, I fucking like it wasn't cumulative.
Oh no.
After the midterm. I literally just did not know like 60+% of the stuff. I was just like, okay, I'm fucked.
Oh, that's so sad.
You didn't even try to get to know the content on your file.
So, dude, that's like how bad of a student I was. That's just like how little I cared about actual school.
Yo, now you know you gotta start from the last page and work backwards, man.
Dude, that's what I learned, man. There was another story. I was taking this math class, and I went to the final. And on the day, so before the final started, the instructor was like, "Oh, is Tony here?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm here." And he's like, "Oh, like I don't know if there's like a glitch or something, but like on my records, I don't have any of your assignments." And I was just like, "Oh yeah, I just didn't do any of them." And I was just like, "Okay." I passed that one.
You passed that one? Okay, nice.
There were just like so many stupid things like that. But anyways, it just shows that I clearly wasn't gunning for med school at that point. Because my roommate was Ben, right? That was my roommate.
Oh yeah.
I was going fucking ham. And obviously that's why he's like so many years ahead of me.
Do you still ever talk to Ben?
Every now and then, yeah. And I shadowed him in radiology actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I think Gordon was.
And you were like, "This is not it for me."
Well, okay, so you know how you talked about on call and like work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
So she was telling me that in that year of residency, I think he averaged about 80 hours per week. And the day I shadowed him, we met up at 5 p.m. in the hospital, and I stayed till about 9:30 or 10, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'll be here till 7 a.m." And I was like, "Yeah, I ain't staying that long."
Why was he there so long?
Those are your shifts. That's what residency is like.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
But sorry, I guess just going back to my story. Sorry, this is a really long-winded story. But so like I talked about before, in like third year, I took a cognitive science class, got to know about like AI stuff. So I thought, oh, this is so cool. I actually took a course on connectionism, which ended up being like about neural networks.
Okay.
So that was like my first introduction. I learned about like how neural networks worked, the history, and like how to diagnose like how these things work, the error functions, and the weights, adjusting weights, like all that basic stuff, right? Gradient descent, all that stuff. I was like, oh, this is really cool. I'm gonna do this. And I was like, okay, like computer science would be really hot right now. I'm gonna apply to comp sci.
Mm-hmm.
And then got rejected.
For better or for worse?
Did that for a hobby for about a year, and so my path has always just been about literally just fixing my own problems. So what happened next was, for a long time I had like starting in about second year university, I started having really bad headaches all the time, and I basically had like chronic pain for many years, and eventually that's what led me to going into healthcare. So I did like a year at SAIT for this like medical lab assistant program, so I can work at the labs like doing blood draws and stuff to figure out if this is something I liked, and also to get a job, because psych undergrad isn't exactly the best job prospects. Liked it. I was like, okay, I want to do med school, and I was like looking at my GPA. I was like, oh yeah, that's a pretty bad GPA. But I'm interested in AI, so why don't I go back to school, do 2 years, do what I have to do in staff, try to get good GPA so I can apply to med school, and also the backup will be doing AI stuff, right? And that's exactly what I did. So did 2 years, graduated, didn't get into med school right away because my GPA honestly is so bad. I think I have the highest MCAT score in my class, but also the lowest GPA in my class. And then worked for a year in research, like cancer research, doing precision medicine stuff. So that's combination of my stats background, right? And then got into med school. So really roundabout way, not planned at all. Really just focusing on fixing my own problems, literally, right? Focusing on fixing the OCD, and fixing the chronic pain, which I actually managed to do last year too.
Dude,
So
nice.
and for a while, I was literally like, okay, am I gonna quit this now? I was like, no, I like it. I'm gonna stay in medicine. Too many.
What's the
careers.
next problem?
One day
you
you'll actually get into AI.
Yeah, I know, right? Fuck.
Maybe you'll be the doctor that automates every other doctor's job.
Oh my god, the plot twist. You're the one replacing yourself.
Nani?
By fixing yourself, you need to fix the system.
Oh shit.
But there are quite a few. I wouldn't say quite a few, but there are a few people in my class and in med school who do have some technical background, and they are really interested in AI. In fact, I think a lot of them more AI stuff than I have after coming to med school.
Really?
In first year, I had contacted this guy who did AI research in medicine, and I was going to work for him in the summer, but I literally was just too lazy. I didn't want to do extra work. But I know a lot of people who do work on all this stuff. In fact, I'm going to talk to someone this coming week who's started this Institute for Medical AI thing. One of my classmates, I'm talking to him about that.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
What a rich backstory. Man, I wish I had a backstory like that.
Well, to get that rich backstory, it means that you have to be literally unemployed until age 33.
Sign me up, man.
I'm ready. Carbon's working. I'm okay. I'm okay with being a sugar baby now.
Oh, Carmen's working now.
Yeah.
Yo, nice.
Yeah, so was she part of that cohort who couldn't get her physio exams and stuff?
Oh, I don't think so. Because she just finished a part of her exam, but I think she still has another portion to be fully licensed. Like you need
But she can already
when you
work.
graduate from physio, there's 2 licensing exams that you have to write, I think.
Oh.
I hope she doesn't watch this, because just in case I got it wrong, she'd be like, I told you so many times.
No, you gotta get her to watch it, man. We need more viewers.
Oh yeah, true.
But for the people that had their exam canceled the day of, that wasn't for her.
Why did they get their exams
Okay.
canceled?
They had technical issues,
Wow, that sucks.
and
Isn't that just so fucking sad? Like, the thing is, they know how many people are writing. They know when they're gonna write it,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And they couldn't prepare for it.
that's pretty
yeah,
sad.
and they canceled the
Like,
morning.
imagine if you're a tech company, right? Like, Jack, like, if that happened to Amazon, you'd be like, all right, fire for that.
Oh, somebody's getting fired for like some. Yeah, there's gonna be accountability. Like there
think
was
she-
one Prime Day like a couple years ago, 2019 or 2018, where like half the pages were just down. Like you were getting redirected to like pictures of puppies for a lot of clicks, and then I heard that on the retail side there was like a 500 person plus call, and
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos was in the call. He was like just fucking screaming. It was like, what the fuck is going on? So
Holy
yeah,
shit.
it's not a fun time. Somebody's getting fired for that.
I think Carmen was saying though it's unregulated, so I don't think anyone's getting fired for
What physio?
the physio exam being canceled.
It's not regulated. There's no like.
It's not regulated by the government or anything. It's like an independent association that does their own like, I guess.
Yeah, so it's
exam.
probably like it's probably their college or whatever that that, I guess, that makes the exam, but the people who administer it might be like a company like Prometric or something,
Oh,
right? The thing is, I really don't know if there's that much accountability in that company, right? Like, there was one time, this didn't happen to me, but there was one MCAT exam that like died halfway through, too, right? And I don't think there was any accountability there.
Yikes.
yikes.
Yeah, we've been at it for about an hour and a half. Does anyone have any other questions specifically for someone?
Yeah, so Jack, it's too late now for us to change careers into tech. You think it's too saturated now? We'll have a hard time getting an entry job.
Yeah, can I get an entry job, bro?
I think for for developers, it does get more and more saturated, but it's not impossible. Like, I think it gets saturated near the top, so to speak. Like everyone wants a good starting job, right? So it's obviously going to be more competitive. The bigger companies, you're going to have more applicants. But I would argue it's not necessarily hard to find a job in a tech company, right? There's always going to be companies hiring developers now. Even if you're not a tech company, chances are you need to make some kind of tech solution for your product, like a website at the very least. And like Jeff was saying, Suncor is doing this, but I think other companies now are also trying to insource their tech talent so that they can better have better control over the product, right? So I don't think it's necessarily hard to find a job in tech, but I don't think all tech jobs are high quality. The companies that have really good pay and like really cool benefits, those are mostly the ones, like the better ones, right? Not every tech company is just automatically gonna have those things.
That's true.
So you got in. What's your advice for people, trying to get to where you are?
So I think there is a bit of a hack in that internships are much easier to get than full-time jobs, and it's much easier to get return offers from internships to start full-time. So the hack is you have to be in school to be eligible for internships.
So you're telling me I should go back to school and get a product internship?
That's possible, right? It's definitely possible at some companies. I think that's pretty much how Deborah did her path to Google. She did a PM internship at SAP at Concur, and then she was able to do the Google APM thing after graduating.
Any tips for you, Tony, on how to get to med school?
Honestly, I don't even know if I can get to med school anymore. This shit gets harder every year. So I was just involved in interviewing people last weekend.
Oh, you got to interview people? Sick.
When you're in second year, you get to interview people. In first year, you get to help facilitate interview week, but in second year, you're actually getting to interview people.
What do you do in third year? Residency?
You work 26-hour calls.
26 hours? Damn.
Yeah, so you actually, I think 26 hours still exists. I think it used to be 36 the limit or something. And they cut it down to 26.
Yeah, when my sister is doing her residency,
that's some bullshit, right?
That's some bullshit.
She did 36 hours, and I was like, what the?
Like for one shift.
I'm just thinking I'm definitely killing someone during that 36-hour shift, right? Like after 14 hours, there's no way I can perform well, right? I don't think it makes sense.
I think you have a nap room or something where you go take a nap.
Yeah.
Damn.
Not bad.
But still,
but going back, I guess tips for pre-meds. Well, okay, so I think schools are more and more looking away from just hard stats in terms of your GPA and your MCAT. I mean, that's still really high, honestly. I won't lie. I think the most common GPA to get into med school right now is still a 4.0.
What the fuck?
Man, what advice would I give? I guess be patient. It's a really long game.
Stay in school, really don't do drugs.
Because here's what it is, right? I think the average age of matriculants is 25 now, and I think it's only going to go up. So I think in the next few years, the average age of people who make it in the med school curriculum is 27, 28. So you have all the time in the world. So take your time, do a bunch of extracurricular stuff that you love. Do well in school. Don't pull me. It's the way I got in will be really tough.
Do you ever
early, I guess.
Do you ever struggle with I know there are some people that go into med school, and from when you get in, you study, and then doing your residency, you could be working 7 to 10 years, or I guess depends on where you go to med school and what residency you take. So I know some residencies are 5 years, 3, of getting in at 27 and then actually beginning to work at 35 and be able to do other things that you love. Is that something that you struggle with going into medical school late, or do you imagine other people would struggle with it?
That's a really good question. I mean, there are people older than me in the class too, right? We have a 40-year-old mom of 3, 4, 5 kids. Like she has a lot of kids. And she used to be an entrepreneur. I think she opened up a gym before. But people sacrifice, right? They sacrifice if this is something they really want to do. I think we also have a physiotherapist that looks like he's in his like 30s or 40s. I've heard that actually. I think in the year above me, I heard from a guy. He said that his chem prof was his classmate. Became his classmate.
Yeah.
But so for me, it was really different because I had an ulterior motive, right? Like my ulterior motive was to learn about medicine so I could fix my problem, like my headaches and my chronic pain. So I didn't really think about those other things. Like I told you, I didn't know how much doctors were paid until just under a year ago. Okay, I'm rambling. Where am I going with this? Do I struggle with it? I struggle with it now. Now that I don't have that like ulterior motive kind of thing motivating me, I struggle with it a bit because I think about how my alternative. So, the day that I got accepted to med school, actually, John Guo, he had just referred me to BCG for a consulting job.
I remember that you're going
Data science. Yeah. And sometimes I think about like what life would be like had I not gone to med school and did something else that exploited what at the time I guess and still is I guess a hot commodity which is knowledge in data science, right? Which is having some programming skills, knowing stats, and having some experience working in like precision medicine, and knowing some AI stuff, right? And I guess being smart. Like sometimes I think that set of skills could be exploited much better financially. But what I think about now is that what I ask myself is, if like I still would choose medicine because I think there are things you learn are really interesting and the things you learn are very useful, right? I like the feeling of being able to take care of people around me, knowing the stuff, right? Like, so if I become a family doctor, I know I'll be able to take care of my family members and my friends should they get sick. I know how to navigate through the healthcare system, right? Which I think is a really big problem for everyone, right? And knowing which specialists to go see, what tests to do, what's unnecessary, what's harmful, right? I think those are really useful skills. So I think I talked about this before, was that if I retired now, if money wasn't a thing, I think I would still go to med school. And so that seals the decision for me.
That's wholesome.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, a day does not go by where I think about Jack and I'm like, the tech world.
So you got to make that cushy FANG compensation.
I guess on that note, I have a question for Jeff, which is why do you want to get into the tech industry?
For me, it's very focused on future-based security. So I don't think oil and gas is going to be either as well paying or as active in the future. But I do think because everything is going to have a cross-section with technology somewhere or another, whether that's digital records in medicine or AI or internal like digital advertising, those sorts of things. That's why I want to get into tech, is that there's so much room and potential for career and I guess income growth. That's why it feels very rushed for me to get into tech, so that I can, like, I'm not too settled. I feel secure for the future that I'll be able to make a good living. I wouldn't say I'm particularly passionate about any certain type of product, but I'd be interested to learn more. And I guess I just haven't found my niche yet. But that being said, if everything paid the same, I'd just like to smoke meat, man. give me like a little smoke weed job.
Are you saying that if you got paid like 100, 200K to smoke weed, you would do it professionally, because I probably would do that too. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Sounds like a good deal.
We better
A
call
new-
up Snoop
a whole
Dogg.
new industry.
Yeah. Okay. That's pretty
So
reasonable.
that's where your stimulus check would go, eh?
So,
Is that where your stimulus check has been going, Jack?
I don't get a stimulus check, bro. I'm not a U.S. citizen.
Oh man. Dude, you gotta rush, man. What if Andrew Yang becomes president soon and he does UBI?
Do I even get it? Yeah, that's a good question, man. I don't
No,
think
no,
I do.
dude, that's why you gotta rush for the citizenship.
Oh, Russian can't rush, dude. I'm born from China. It's like a fucking 15-year waiting time, bro. Don't you know there's 2 categories when you apply for American green card? Non-Chinese and Indian, or Chinese and Indian?
Seriously? Even if you're
So-
like a super professional, like, you know, working in this super hot industry and stuff?
Yeah, the industry doesn't matter. It matters for... No. So your education type matters for H-1B visa. So H-1B is a lottery draw, basically. I have roughly a third chance, like 33% chance to get it. If I was a master's or PhD student, I think it's like 40-something% chance, and then, yeah, stuff like that. But green card is something that you can only apply to after you get an H-1B. And so for most countries, it's about a year to 2 years max. For China, it's like 10 plus, 15 years. For India, it's like 100.
wait, is it if you're born in China?
It's if you're
Or-
born. It's not by
Oh,
citizenship.
shit.
So it's
Oh,
actually...
I'm good.
Yeah, so if you're HK, you're Taiwan, you are good. You're like a year waiting time. So it's...
Okay, so you're telling that my fiance can go
Yeah.
become a citizen, and then I'll just, you
Well,
know,
she won't be a citizen. She'll have a green card. And I don't think you can get a green card from marrying another green card. I don't know. Maybe.
but she'll have a better chance of becoming a citizen than I do.
Yes.
She's born in Hong Kong.
Yes.
No, she's born in Canada.
Oh, yeah, but she said she's already a citizen, basically. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Dude, it's time to get her on that process
it's
early.
us that's screwed. Like we yeah. But just make sure your kid's born in the U.S. That's just take a trip to Vegas or something. Like 8 months in, you know, just.
Okay, man, we strongly advise you not to board the plane because your due date is literally in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Oh, what is it?
So she's like, you better hurry up to kind of be across the waters internationally.
Gotta be cross that border.
Yeah, actually. So, honestly, that's what I'm trying to do with my kid. Like, even if I'm gonna raise my kid in Canada, which I think I would like to, I still want them to have American citizenship growing up. I just think it opens up a lot of doors later in life. Like, they could choose never to go to the U.S. and it'll still make their life easier just by having it.
I too wish I had an American citizenship. I have cousins that live in San Francisco, and apparently a long time ago, my parents were in the process of applying for U.S. citizenship for all of us, but then they're like, fuck it.
Classic.
now I'm like, fuck.
Estelle.
Classic. Yeah. So I'm a try not to fuck it with my kids for this one thing.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just it's a little bit harder to get jobs here because companies will have to sponsor a visa for you.
True.
But yeah. I guess if there's no other questions we have for one another, we could wrap this one up. We're close to 2 hours.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so this was a good episode. I enjoyed the conversations we had. And I learned a lot from both of you about what you guys do. Actually, I know exactly what Tony does. So you just go to class and you take exams. That's
You go to class though, Tony?
Pretty much it. I do not attend them live. I watch the recordings at 2.1 times speed.
2.1? That's
Wait, what?
Dude, this is a special power that you learn in med school. Okay, so like at first when people told me like, oh, I watched this lecture at 1.5 speed, I'm like, I tried that. I'm like, dude, I don't understand the thing. No word came through.
yeah.
And then you're just like, well, there's so much fucking material. I need to do this. So then you start learning how to do it, and then eventually you're able to do it. I listen to my audiobooks at 2 times speed.
Any
Wow.
In fact,
Tips?
okay, funny story. One time I was listening to a book. I'm like, oh, this must be at normal speed because it sounds so slow. And then I looked at my phone. This is 1.5 speed. Oh shit.
Damn. You're gonna be unable to recognize like normal speed like voice soon.
Do you find
Yeah.
You're gonna
it's-
think we're talking in slow mo. Like, does it sound like we're talking like drunk to you right now?
No. But
All right, I'm gonna
that's-
stop recording. By the way, that's the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching or listening.
all right, see ya.